Welcome to the channel. Help me hit 600 subscribers. Now let's go to the video. With Ronaldo, Kante, and Benzema in Saudi Arabia, money answers all football calls. What money can't do doesn't exist. That's exactly what's happening in the current summer transfer market. In football, the richest clubs receive all the best players to compete for the biggest trophies. In the 1970s, until the late 1990s, Italian clubs were the destination for the best players in the world because they could afford the money that clubs in Holland, France, Belgium and Eastern European countries demanded to let their best players go to greener pastures. England, Spain and Germany took over at the start of the century with premiership teams, boosted by the new wave of television money and other pacts, transforming it into football's mecca. Thus, playing in the English Premier League has become the new golden dream of the best stars in the world. While players from South America, until then, preferred Spanish La Liga because of the mild climate, same language and similar style of play, playing in England with its rich offerings has become the new pursuit for these players, who dream of the luxury their talents can bring them. The United States of America, USA, and China held fleeting dominance of the transfer market in the early 1990s and 2000s respectively, but this attraction, particularly the Chinese model, did not last long as they could not sustain the large payments needed to attract the world's best legs to nascent leagues. And now there's another big daddy in town, doling out big bucks to get players, some of whom are still at their peak. It's Saudi Arabia, which has an endless supply of petrodollars to invest in football projects. In the past, playing in Europe's biggest competition, the UEFA Champions League was the holy grail for all players, but not anymore as Saudi Arabia is striking massive deals to bring in some of the best players in the world to join the Saudi Pro League. The roll call is intimidating. Already confirmed for the 2023-24 season are Cristiano Ronaldo, who earns £173 million per season at al-Nassr, and Karim Benzema, who earns £100 million at al-Ittihad. 6 Chelsea regulars from England packed their bags and moved to Saudi Arabia. They include N'Golo Kante, Edouard Mendy, Hakim Ziyech and Kalidou Koulibaly. Romelu Lukaku, who is on loan at Inter Milan, and Thiago Silva are on their way to the league. Talisca, al-Nassr, Helder Costa, al-Ittihad, Moussa Marega, al-Hilal, David Ospina, al-Nassr, Ahmed Higazi, al-Ittihad, Alvaro Medran, al-Tawoun, are also in the Saudi League. Adam Mar, Damak, Odion Igalo, al-Hilal, and Ever Banega, al-Shabab. These transfers would further solidify Saudi Arabia's position as a crucial player in the global football market. To put his spending in perspective, it's important to note that the highest ever contract in European football was Lionel Messi's with Barcelona. He earns €75 million a year while at the Catalan club. However, the financial landscape has changed dramatically in Saudi Arabia. Ronaldo reportedly earns an astonishing €200 million a year, while Benzema also commands the same sum. Kante's potential contract would be worth €100 million annually. A spending spree triggered by the Saudi Public Investment Fund's (PIF) takeover of 4 of the kingdom's top clubs in early June, Al-Hilal, Al-Ittihad, Al-Nassr and Al-Ahly, caused quite a stir across the country. The football world. The fund acquired a 75% stake in each of those sides and immediately began targeting elite-level players for its assets. Saudi Arabia offered Messi an impressive £400 million contract, but the Argentine star rejected it in favor of playing for Inter Miami. As well as paying monstrous salaries to players, the Saudis' targets are mainly free agents, whose acquisition would likely have a significant impact on European football. According to European football experts, the lure of Saudi money could entice more players to fulfill their contracts, which could lead to greater competition for clubs looking to secure their services. This development will definitely change the dynamic of player transfers and club deals in the coming seasons. A player like Kante secures a staggering £90 million per season through a combination of image rights, commercial deals, and creative portfolio. That equates to a weekly salary of around £1.65 million. According to reports, Saudi Arabia's football chiefs have carefully crafted a list of players to enter the system. And to close deals it is relying on cash, the one commodity it knows it can offer more than any of its rival leagues. The plan is a centralized effort backed at the highest levels of Saudi Arabia and funded by the kingdom's massive sovereign wealth fund. The ultimate goal is to transform the country's national league, a footnote on the world football scene, into a destination for the best talent. To make that happen, Saudi clubs are already approaching players receptive to moving to the kingdom with some of the highest annual salaries in the history of the sport. The deals could require more than $1 billion for salaries for around 20 foreign players. However, with all the money flying, some players still rejected the call to get on the train from Saudi Arabia. In addition to Messi, considered by his admirers as the greatest player of his generation, who embraced Inter Miami in Major League Soccer, MLS, in the United States, Neymar, Luka Modric and Isco chose to remain in Europe. Explaining the new wave of investment by the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, former GOM State FA President Ahmed Gara Gom, who is a consultant to the Royal Morocco Football Association, said it is a new strategy adopted by the Islamic country to preserve its national identity and social security in a nation known for its many restrictions. Gom said that Saudi Arabia sees sport as a tool for national preservation and social inclusion. He said, over the last 6 years or so, the Saudi Crown Prince, who is less conservative than his parents, has found that its citizens were leaving the country en masse for friendlier nations, where they could enjoy some of the things their own country had enjoyed. Country denied them. There were social and economic constraints that prevented citizens from living the kind of lives they could have in neighboring countries like Kuwait, UAE, Qatar, and even Bahrain. So he decided to relax some of those restrictions. In the recent past, women were not allowed to drive or go to stadiums to watch football, boxing, and other sports. They were also not allowed to go to theaters. He noticed that Saudis travel to Europe, America, and neighboring countries to enjoy such luxuries. In addition to the capital flight that accompanied these migrations, she also denied the country's young population any form of entertainment, hence her preference for moving to more relaxed countries than staying in slavery in Saudi Arabia. He also found that the amount of money flowing out of Saudi Arabia every weekend was so alarming that he decided to do something to stop it. There were no nightclubs in Saudi Arabia, no casinos, and the beaches were restricted to men only. Now all these things have been provided for everyone by the government. They went a step further in bringing the biggest events in boxing, golf and other sports to the realm. He has now relaxed cultural, social and even religious restrictions. The only exceptions to the new way of life are the holy cities of Mecca and Medina. You still cannot bring the European way of life there. They still have these restrictions to preserve Islamic values in cities. Before, American stations in Saudi Arabia allowed people to drink alcohol within the confines of the base, and some Saudis used to sneak in to enjoy it. Saudis were moving to other countries to become citizens, but the new laws tamed these migrations. Gom also explained that the kingdom now encourages wealthy individuals to invest in clubs, both at home and abroad. So they bought clubs in England, France, Italy and many other parts of Europe. After that, they are now bringing the stars home for their people to enjoy rather than traveling overseas to watch the big games. In addition to football, golf and boxing, Gom said the Saudis are also into athletics, adding that they will soon start producing world champions with the resources and new investment facilities across the kingdom. If you go to Saudi Arabia, you will see a lot of skyscrapers, which are not just for aesthetic values. Those buildings are there because they want the best. You will find these structures in almost every Arab country because people like competition that brings out the best in them. Writing for the New York Times, Tariq Panja and Ahmed Al-Amran revealed that British Saudi League chief executive Gary Cook, a former Nike employee who briefly managed Manchester City after it was bought by the brother of the UAE ruler states, was tasked with carrying out the plans. The project comes on the heels of a surprisingly strong performance by Saudi Arabia at last year's Men's World Cup in Qatar. The team's run included an impressive win over eventual champions Argentina, which filled Saudi streets and the halls of power in Riyadh with pride. The aim of the project is not so much to equate the Saudi League with centuries-old competitions such as the English Premier League or other major European competitions, but to increase Saudi influence in the sport and perhaps raise its profile in the 2030 World Cup bid. But the effort is also reminiscent of a similar scheme a decade ago, in which China tried to force its way into the global football conversation through a series of high-profile, high-value acquisitions. This bold plan, eventually undermined by broken contracts, economic implosions. Plans for the Saudi League to become Asia's dominant domestic competition are equally subject to the whims of the country's leadership and could still be derailed by a sudden change in direction or the ability to sign the kind of elite talent that is being chased. Players would also be committing themselves to contracts with teams that in the past regularly attended arbitration hearings, claiming unpaid fees and wages. The plan is for the league, not the clubs, to centrally negotiate player transfers and assign players to certain teams, in a model similar to that used by Major League Soccer when building its global profile. Centralized signings would be a departure from what is typical in much of the rest of the world, where clubs directly acquire and trade players independently. The size of the Saudi war chest is unclear, but officials briefed on the matter say it is as large as the list of players the league has identified as potential recruits. Much of the money invested in the league and clubs in recent times has come from the Public Investment Fund, the country's sovereign wealth fund chaired by the kingdom's powerful crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. The fund, according to Tariq Panja and Ahmed Al-Amran, has signed 20-year commercial deals worth tens of millions of dollars with the four most popular clubs in the Saudi Premier League. These agreements will require teams, 2 from Riyadh and 2 from the port city of Jeddah, to play in new arenas in entertainment complexes being built by PIF subsidiaries. The PIF also sponsors the league itself through one of its portfolio companies, real estate developer Roshan. They announced that the objective is for the 4 biggest teams to place 3 top foreigners each, and for 8 more players to be distributed among the remaining 12 teams in the championship. The move towards greater league centralization would end a period of autonomy granted to clubs and is a further indication of the Saudi state's interest in using sport as part of a move to alter perceptions of the kingdom on the global stage and diversify its economy farther afield. Of the oil. Saudi Arabia has been among the biggest spenders in global sports in recent years, bringing major events to the kingdom and investing in sports properties. Accused of using sport to distract attention from their human rights record, the Saudis were not deterred, as exemplified by the Golf Series, which attracted some of the sport's biggest stars to the LIV. Saudi officials have vehemently denied the swashing allegations, arguing that some of the motivations behind their foray into global sport include catering to the sport-loving population and encouraging greater physical activity in a country where obesity and diabetes are rife, they said. He wrote. With money flying and players struggling to get on the bandwagon, some football experts believe that insane money paid to players would have a corrupting influence on the game. Indeed, former Manchester United captain Gary Neville has called for an embargo on transferring players to the Saudi League. He told BBC Sport, the Premier League should impose an instant embargo on transfers to Saudi Arabia to ensure the integrity of the game is not undermined. Checks must be made on the appropriateness of transactions. If you go through this process, obviously transfers can open again. But I believe that, at this point in time, transfers should be stopped until you look at Chelsea's ownership structure and whether there are beneficial transfer transactions that are inappropriate. Neville's call shines a spotlight on some Premiership clubs' financial woes and a possible ploy to balance their books through the back door. The BBC reports that both Chelsea and Wolves have faced tough decisions regarding recruitment this summer as they try to stay within the Premier League's 3-year cap with losses of £105 million under the rules. Financial Fair Play, FFP. Chelsea spent over £400 million on transfers last season, while Wolves posted a loss of £46.1 million last year, and boss Julen Lopetegui has said the club must solve the FFP's problems to compete in the league. First Division. Wolves thought Neves would join Barcelona this summer. However, the £47 million fee agreed with Al Hilal for the Portuguese midfielder was much higher than anticipated. However, some experts argue that issues such as human rights violations should not detract from the new lease of life and other good things that Saudi Arabia has brought to the sport, like big business. The main official of the Confederation of African Football, CAF, Dr. Chris Imarawa, said the Saudis have a clear idea of what they want to achieve with the game and have done the necessary things to get the desired results. On the impact of the Saudi Pro League on the global game, Amarawa said he would make more investment in the game for those who want to stay competitive. Football is purely a business, and the people currently running contemporary football will always explore ways to expand their business. Players, coaches and others will also always look for ways to improve their lives. We have people migrating to Europe and nobody questions that. Football has an international dimension in terms of promoting the country. He rejected the claim that Saudi Arabia's investments in sports amounted to financial doping, saying, "If any country can put in things that would attract players, coaches and technical experts to their game, so be it. People must develop their own country structures to attract the best players." A lot of people are watching the English Premier League and the organizers are making a lot of money from viewers all over the world. Those who want to get the best players know that they have to invest in their game. We also need to look at the caliber of people moving to Saudi Arabia. If their policy is to attract the best players, we should start putting a connection to the dot. It is for a strategic reason that they are attracting the best experts to work behind the scenes. A lot is happening in Saudi Arabia. When things like this happen, we must also first identify where our league is and how to leverage it. Amarawa, who is one of the best FIFA security agents in the game, said that countries like Nigeria could use the Saudi structure to develop their football. He added, "Saudi Arabia is open to signing agreements for joint ventures, and it is up to the Football Association of Nigeria to think about how they can use it to develop Nigerian football. Association football must explore ways to join the tsunami, learn from the Saudis and seek ways to capitalize on the enormous opportunities they are creating." Former Super Eagles manager Adegboy Onigbind sees Saudi Arabia's phenomenon as a development worthy of emulation rather than condemnation. According to Onigbind, who for decades has championed the development of Nigerian football from the grassroots, Saudi Arabia is starting to attract the best players to its league because it has turned the game into a big business capable of paying the high fees needed to attract the top players. Better legs. Anyone who raises their voice against the Saudi Pro League is not being democratic. How many Nigerians are in Canada right now for various jobs? Football is a vocation and players go where they are paid well, so it's not Saudi Arabia's fault that they are doing things that are attracting top footballers to their league. On the allegation that the Saudis are trying to use the sport to whitewash their image, which has been marred by alleged human rights abuses, Onigbind said the decision on whether or not to go to the Middle Eastern country should be left to individual players. Football is a calling and people go where they feel their interests are best served. It is unfair and undemocratic to try to stop people from moving to where they think they will make the best use of their talents. He advised Nigerian football authorities to find ways to emulate Saudi Arabia where things work, adding that if the country developed its football to the world standard, people from all over the world would flock to Nigeria for the game. They are talking about human rights abuses, but I ask, if a country is known for killing people and some decide to go there, nobody has the right to stop them. On Nigeria compared to Saudi Arabia, I have been talking about the country's football development programs, but nobody wants to listen. Opportunities exist, but we are not doing anything with them. I have been saying for a long time that I will no longer discuss Nigerian football because for me it is non-existent. Make your football good and people will come to play here. We must look into why Nigerian players travel abroad in search of greener pastures. There are doubts over the sustainability of Saudi Arabia's league, with some experts fearing it will not become another Chinese Super League, which briefly attracted much interest and paid large sums to attract top-level players such as the former Manchester United and City, Carlos Tevez. These spending levels did not last. Saudi Pro League promoters argue that both leagues operate on different models. While the Saudi Pro League, which has been around since the 1970s with a real fan base, relies on government funding, the Chinese Super League was aimed at encouraging entrepreneurs to do things. Then it stopped. The presence of the big stars brought a lot of attention to the league, with television revenues galloping to an unprecedented high. It also has a model that makes it purely a business concern that wants to change the gaming economy in Saudi Arabia to make it more private sector driven and develop clubs, companies and brands. Hope you enjoyed the video. What did you think of the video? Subscribe to the channel and leave your opinion in the comments.